Hi, this is Joe Rabil from Rabil Stock Research. So I'm going to start out the show with a lesson, but I am going to talk about the S&P. I want to go through what stages the market can be in. There's 4 different stages. I want to go through those. I want to talk about the stage the market is in right this second, but also I want to use ADX and volatility to help determine where we are and what those stages are. So I'm going to do that in the lesson. And then also I want to answer a viewer request for the screen that I like to use for like a higher time frame pullback trade. So I'm going to show that briefly. And then I also want to go through the sectors. There's some shifts taking place in the sectors I think will be important. After we do that, we'll go through these symbol requests that came through. Let's go ahead and get going. So I'd like to get started with this lesson using a couple simple graphics. And first of all, we want to understand basically the 4 stages of a market trend. All right, we've got the basing stage or stage 1, where we're in an accumulation phase. We've got the stage 2 uptrend after we break out, get the trend moving to the upside, and then we have a topping phase, which takes place before we turn to the downside, and then we have a downward trends phase, and then we start the process all over again with the stage 1 basing process, which is essentially sideways. And what we're looking for, so one of the characteristics you're trying to identify in terms of trying to figure out whether we're in a stage 1 base or a stage 3 top is volatility. Okay. A lot of times we'll see a shift in momentum also taking place at these 2 areas where the momentum might have been strong to the downside, and then it starts to shift back and go back to neutral and then start to shift back to the upside. And the same thing holds true here. It'll be very strong, and then we'll start to see signs that the trend is, the momentum is starting to shift along with the trend. However, we also want to recognize that in a stage 1 sideways pattern, the volatility tends to be a little bit lower. In a stage 3 topping pattern, the volatility tends to be a little bit higher. All right, now, a couple of things that I would suggest is that if you know you're in a choppy kind of sideways range after a strong uptrend, maybe you've broken the uptrend line, but you haven't started the downtrend, and the volatility is higher, you want to sort of change your strategy. This strategy isn't going to be as helpful. Looking for really strong, powerful trends, using multiple time frames, using all the strategies that I talk about in my book and my courses, I would say that you'd be better off when we're in a stage 3 topping pattern is maybe trade off support and resistance. Look for, short-term swings. You can still use multiple time frame analysis, but instead of looking for trending plays or powerful trends, look to sell resistance or buy support. And then in downtrends, the same concept going to the upside. We're looking for the stocks with the strongest bearish trends, using multiple time frames, using momentum. And then we start the process all over again with this low ADX pattern is what we're looking for. We want low volatility, but we also want low trend strength. And we'd like that to be, that combination tends to form nice spacing patterns that can emerge into very strong trends. All right, so that's sort of the basics of it. Now, when we start to look at what's taken place, this is more in reality what the market looks like, as opposed to coming all the way back down to the lows. We tend to build a base, we form an uptrend, we make a top, and then we go down, and then the new base forms above this old base. Now, there are some cyclicals that will go all the way back down and start the process all over again, and some stocks have done that. But for the most part, I think you should be more thinking that this is going to be a higher base each time, but we still can go through the same process of forming these 4 stages, right? Basing stage, stage 2 uptrend, stage 3 top, and then a stage 4 downtrend, and then we look to start the process all over again. Now, here's what's interesting. This happens in all time frames, all right? You can find long-term on a monthly, you can find this pattern develop, you can find the same thing happen inside of that trend using a weekly or a daily or even an hourly chart, and obviously you can go down to micro time frames down to a 1 minute, and they'll happen over and over and over again. So we're trying to constantly find a match where we get back-to-back time frames in uptrends, and that tends to be where you can make the most amount of money. Now, you might not enter when both are in uptrends. You might be buying when the higher time frame is in an uptrend and the lower time frame is still basing and it's about to emerge into a new trend. But that's the concept we want to look for. Now, let's just take a quick peek at the S&P right now and just look at where we're situated. And let's just talk a little bit about how this sets up. So we get this move to the upside in 2021. It makes a nice move. We've got a nice trend, right? We're making higher highs and higher lows. We have pretty good momentum up until about the middle part of the year. And then the momentum starts to die off and not confirm based on ADX, not confirm based on the MACD. Right? But we're still in an uptrend at this point, but we're getting kind of an early warning sign here that the momentum is telling us that we should be maybe on the lookout for some kind of a reversal to take place. The other thing that I'm not showing here is that the volatility started to go up right about where that arrow is, right? In the November timeframe, we started to get a pretty nice increase in volatility. So when we get that combination of a trend where the volatility is starting to go up and we're losing momentum and we're getting momentum divergence, we should definitely be on the lookout for a reversal. Now, if you notice, we went through the bear market and we dropped, then we started to see signs where the momentum was slowing down. And then look at this period where volatility dropped and so did the trend strength. And if you notice, I kind of measure volatility sometimes by looking at these DI lines. If both DI lines and the ADX line, the blue line, stay below the 25 level, not only do we have low trend strength, but we also have low volatility. That's a lot different than what took place at this peak here. You notice how we had these popping above, both green and red still popping above. It wasn't really like a low ADX condition with low volatility like it was here. So this is more of a basing stage. This is more of a stage 3 topping phase. All right. So you can use ADX to really kind of identify these things. Now we've moved up. If you notice, we still have pretty good trend strength. We're getting a little bit of divergence, but look at how far above the 25 line we are on an ADX basis. And so, yeah, we've got maybe some signs if we break this trend line here, we're getting pretty close that we could start some kind of a choppy pattern or a consolidation pattern. But it could be a stage 3 topping pattern that emerges into a new uptrend. Not all stage 3s turn into 4s. Doesn't always work that way. So you want to be aware of that, and we want to use our momentum indicators to help us look for that. Now, one of the things that's bothering me is that the volatility has gone up. But notice the difference between this peak, where volatility is going up at this peak, right? And we had a lot of momentum loss. That is not taking place here. I'm more inclined to believe that we've got some high volatility that could cause a correction, but not a big reversal at this point. That's where I'm situated. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. I'm on this page right now. You can see at the top, I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses now. I've individually priced them, or you can buy them as a bundle, and they are lifetime access now. So I changed that. It's not year to year. Okay. And then we have the individual package. I have about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video, weekly video for that package that covers a lot of details into what I'm seeing for the week. So if you have an interest, go ahead and take a look. Also, the book is on the book tab. You can go if this is a good place to start if you're new to my methodology. Before we get going, my comments are for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Okay, so here's my scan. And one of the things I'll point out is that the bottom part here, you could do this for any list of stocks. You can use your own criteria for volume or market cap. I just add that in to keep the list a little smaller. This is the key up here, this upper part. And if you notice, I'm only focusing in on the price action and relative to its moving averages. I don't use ADX and MACD in my screens for the most part because I want to just find patterns and then look at the strength. One of the things you could add to this if you want is put like a weekly ADX is greater than 25 or something like that if you want. And maybe even use like above 23, give it a little room around that 25 level. But what this is essentially looking for is a weekly chart where the 18 is above the 40, and on the daily, the 18 has crossed down below the 40. So I call it opposing trend setup because the daily chart is going in the opposite direction of the weekly. And we know we've got a moving average that is above the 40, 18 above the 40 on the weekly. So we've got this sort of uptrend on the weekly, and then we're getting a pullback as defined by the reversal on the daily chart. So it's a good starting point. Hopefully this helps and answers your question on that. All right, let's go ahead and look at the sector action because I've got the 11 sectors up at the same time. I really like this look, this ACP pattern layout. And so I've got the price action with an 18 and 40 week simple moving averages. I've got the relative strength line here at the bottom, and I've got an 18, I've got a 30 moving average of the relative strength overlaid on all of these charts. Okay, so what we're looking for is and you can see what's taking place in the financials. We had this kind of a drop. It was showing signs of improvement, then had a big kind of decline and tested support on a relative basis, and now is turning back up through its moving average. The price action is actually breaking out, but I'm really encouraged by seeing this big up move in the relative strength line while this is rallied up. We know that this is doing it relative to the S&P, meaning the S&P isn't pulling this group up, this sector up. This is doing it. This is its performance relative to the S&P. So it's really been outperforming since July kicked in. Look at what happened since July kicked in for the industrials. Nice move off the low after a really dismal period on a relative basis. I actually think this is very close to flipping its trend back to the upside. This will take a little bit more work. The REITs have actually climbed back above their moving average here after a really good start to July. Same thing for the utilities, and the utilities had broken the downtrend line, moved up, and now tested. If they can get back above this level, we have that 1, 2, 3. So we kind of want to be on the lookout for the sectors that have that potential. Right now, it's the financials and the utilities, but I can tell you by looking at the individual stocks inside the REITs, there are some massive breakouts in the REITs taking place right now. So really good action there. Now, on the flip side, I do think it's important to be on the lookout for this reversal pattern going down. So we had the 1 to the downside, and then we've tested. That's the 2, and now we're coming back down to test. And we haven't flipped through and broken this, similar to how we haven't flipped over and flipped out and flipped over and broken out above this level either. But they're getting close, and they're worth watching, especially if this clearly breaks the 18. Now, the same thing holds true with the XLC. This is starting to roll over, and if the moving average turns down, right? If the 30-week moving average rolls over on these, then I think that's pretty important, especially if we break the 18-week, right? If price breaks the 18-week and this relative strength rolls over, then there's a pretty good chance that this trend on a relative basis is finally reversed to the downside. Same thing holds true with the XLK as it's sitting right near the 18-week. So I think there's a lot of important things to watch here, and we have to continue to monitor. But right now, I love the action in the financials. A lot of improvement in the XLI. Also in the utilities, and certainly looking at individual stocks in the REITs as well. All right. Let's go ahead and look at the QQQ. So we talked about the S&P and the volatility, but it was sitting on that trend line, and now we're trying to bounce off that. Look at what the QQQ is doing here. We came down to the 18-week. Notice how these moving averages are moving up at about the same rate. We still have enough strength. This is a really strong reading in ADX, right? And then we corrected, and then we made another move, and we got another really strong reading. And then we corrected, and then we got another move. And this is better. You notice how they're kind of weakening? It's above 25, but it's not as strong, right? And we're noticing some signs of distribution here where some volume selling's coming in. So I think this is weakened a little bit, especially turning at the big round number at 500. So we got the MACD to turn down through the signal line for the second time up here in this extended area. There's enough evidence sort of building up that makes me believe that probably not going to just turn back up and start a new uptrend. We have a little bit of overrun in the MACD zero line on the daily, but the other thing I want to point out on the daily is this strength in the ADX to the downside. So this blue line is going up based on not on the buyers, but based on the sellers. And that's telling me that we should be looking for more consolidation. Doesn't mean we can't rally. We might actually get up to 475 or something like that. But that's not really, to me, this isn't the likelihood is that we're not going to just go ahead and start a new move to the upside. We're probably going to spend more time kind of fiddling around in here, maybe spend a little time consolidating and allowing the 18-month to catch up. Now, when I look at patterns, when I go through the indexes, this is the one that just jumps off the page. Look at this. This is a pattern we'd want. If this were a stock, we'd have a lot of interest in. Look at the base that's formed on the monthly. Look at the breakout pattern. Look at the new ADX formation. Look at the volume. You can really see the volume on the daily chart and the ADX climbing above 25 for the first time in a while. And then we go and we look at that relative strength. So this is all encouraging signs for IWM, but I think it's even more encouraging for the market in terms of broadening and using in other areas outside those big names. That's really what we were trying to identify is continued strength. It's not like there's only been 10 stocks going up. I'm not trying to say that's what's been happening, but we could see a lot more participation, and it could be a lot easier to identify new ideas. And I'll tell you that screen that I showed earlier, if this continues to improve over time, you're going to see the number of stocks passing that increase pretty dramatically. Okay, let's look at NVIDIA real briefly. I'm going to start going through some of these requests. So this was a pretty sharp pullback, right? But look at what it did. All it's done so far is correct back to the 18-week. Look at where we turned around. We turned around right at the 18-week. Look at where it did last time. I mean, I'm not making this up. This 18-week is pretty powerful. 18 on any time frame will do this. It could be the 20 if you want to use it, but it's just a really powerful tool. Now, we have shown a little bit of momentum loss. We've got these lines sort of coming together and forming a contraction potentially. So I'd be more inclined to believe that this consolidates and forces these lines to come together like that. It might not want to just fall apart here and break the 18 and do something really violent. There's a big open area here, so I'm not all that interested in playing this long term. If I'm going to play this, I'm going to play it off this time frame using the daily as my entry. Because this overran, I need more evidence that this is turning around. Right now, we'd need like a sharp move to the upside, maybe like a spike version and form a higher low and be an undercut and rally type of a pattern would be the fastest way this could develop. But again, because the ADX is showing some strength here, I don't think I would be in a big rush on that. Look at the breakout in UNH. This has 550 was the level I've been watching for. Volume action was good. This looks really pretty attractive. It'd be nice if we got a little bit of a check of that level and then turn back to the upside, but this is a good one. I'd add it to my watch list and keep an eye on it. BA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about BA, and then I've got two other stocks. I like to highlight a few that really are catching my eye. And what's happening is aerospace is catching my eye. At least a few this week were fresh ideas that I thought were pretty powerful. Now, when I look at Boeing, it had this big decline. It rallied up and then came back down and tested this area and then made a move up. It was trying to turn things around into the end of the year, and then it really had some issues, obviously, with some of the fundamentals. It caused it to re-break the 18-month line, but I still think there's a pretty significant amount of support underneath, and it's starting to kind of form this little sideways action here. Now, let me just see if earnings are before the market. So we've already had the earnings on this, and it's not really having a great effect. Now, what I would be looking for is a low ADX. You see the low ADX condition? See if this can break out. We've got a good enough pattern on the weekly that we could play this for a trade. I would view it only as a trading pattern. if you wanted to do that. Now, let's start looking at a couple other aerospace. Now, look at the RTX. Now, when I compare this to Boeing, I mean, this is so much more attractive to me. Look at how this has low ADX on the monthly, but look at the strength on the weekly. Look at the pullback then we got this huge force to the breakout with a big gap up and everything. New momentum coming into this. If we can get some kind of a pullback, a little closer to 110. It doesn't have to be right at 110, but a little bit closer to 110. This would look really, really attractive. And then we can go even one step further and look at this LMT. This is, to me, this is the best looking one of the bunch in the aerospace area right now. Low ADX on the monthly and low ADX on the weekly. And now it's kicking into gear. And before too long, this ADX is going to be climbing above 25. What we're looking for when that happens is any kind of the first kind of check back to price support a little bit closer to the 18-week. And we have that combination. A lot of times you can expect the stock to move up for a pretty significant period of time, 6 to 12 months, and what could be longer when you look at it from a monthly, weekly. Thanks for watching today. If you have any stock requests you'd like me to analyze on next week's show, you can go ahead and send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com, or you can put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, you can go to my YouTube channel called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.